Hi human, I am Karma. Apparently, I'm a bitch. I've been called revenge, punishment, the universe's favorite hitman. Honestly, I've had worse reviews. The funny part? Almost none of it's true. Can I ask you something? Have you ever blamed karma for something that, if you were completely honest, had actually started long before you noticed it? Yeah, that's what I thought. I suppose it's finally my turn to speak. I've been listening to humans talk about me for thousands of years. Apparently, I'm responsible for failed relationships, bad investments, missed opportunities, flat tires, your ex getting engaged, your phone slipping into the toilet. Honestly, I'm impressed. I didn't realize I was that busy. Some of you treat me like I wake up every morning with a checklist. Let's see, who are we ruining today? No, that's not my job. Actually, it never was. The strange thing isn't that people misunderstand me. It's how consistently they misunderstand me. Every civilization gives me a different outfit, different symbols, different stories, but somehow you all reach the same conclusion. Something bad happened. Must have been karma. You know what's funny? I've never once heard someone win the lottery and whisper, "Wow, good karma." No. Suddenly that was hard work, smart decisions, manifestation. Funny how I only get invited when things go wrong. I've stopped taking it personally. A few thousand years will do that to you. Mostly, I just find it fascinating, because every time someone points at me, they're usually pointing in the wrong direction. Take one of my favorite examples. Someone ignores their health for 15 years, sleeps 4 hours a night, lives on energy drinks, promises they'll start exercising next Monday. You know, the mythical Monday that's apparently been coming for a decade. Then one day, the doctor walks into the room with news they weren't hoping to hear, and almost immediately someone says, "Karma finally caught up." Really? I did? That's an interesting version of events, because from where I was standing, nobody caught up to anybody. Tuesday simply introduced itself to Friday, one choice, then another, tiny enough to ignore on their own, until one day they weren't tiny anymore. I didn't create that story. I just watched it arrive at its ending. That's usually how it goes. You humans have a remarkable talent. You notice consequences because they're loud. Choices. Those are usually quiet. And quiet things are easy to forget until they become impossible to ignore. Here's another one. Someone spends years saying, "I've just been so busy." They don't call their parents. They cancel dinner. Messages become shorter. Visits become birthdays. Birthdays become holidays. Then holidays become... When did we stop talking so much? A few years later, they sit in front of a friend, shaking their head. I don't know what happened. We just drifted apart. Then someone nearby nods wisely. Karma. No, that wasn't me either. That was 1,000 tiny absences introducing themselves all at once. You keep expecting consequences to arrive wearing dramatic music. Most of them don't. They arrive quietly. They look almost ordinary, which is exactly why you mistake them for fate. I've heard every version of this. Trust me, after several thousand years, the excuses start sounding surprisingly familiar. It's just bad luck. It came out of nowhere. The universe must hate me. No. The universe was actually being quite consistent. You just weren't paying attention when the story was still small. And before you accuse me of being insensitive, I'm not laughing because people suffer. I'm laughing because you keep blaming the witness instead of looking for the beginning of the story. There's a difference, a very important one, because once you decide I'm responsible, the story ends. You never ask the only question that could actually help. Where did this really begin? You know what the funny part is? Being blamed was never the frustrating part. Honestly, after a few thousand years, you build up a tolerance for bad publicity. I've been called revenge, justice, the universe balancing the books. One civilization even blamed me for their crops failing after they planted them in sand. I wanted to help, but I don't think even I could save that decision. No. What actually makes me sigh isn't being misunderstood. It's watching how quickly the misunderstanding ends the conversation. The moment someone says, "It was karma," the investigation is over. Nobody looks backward anymore. And that's usually where the answer is waiting. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine someone who interrupts everyone.
What?
Not occasionally, constantly. You start telling a story, they finish your sentence. You share an opinion, they're already explaining why theirs is better. You mention a problem, suddenly they're telling you about theirs. Years pass, then one afternoon they sit across from someone and quietly admit, "I don't know why nobody really listens to me." And almost on cue, someone whispers, "Karma." No, that wasn't me. That was years of conversations teaching people that listening wasn't expected. You called it personality. Everyone else experienced it as exhaustion. See, that's the part you keep missing. Consequences are incredibly polite.
What?
They almost never arrive the same day you invite them. They wait, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. Long enough for you to forget sending the invitation in the first place. Then, when they finally knock on the door, you look at me. I have to admit, it's almost impressive. Or take trust. Humans always imagine trust breaks in one dramatic moment, one betrayal, one terrible decision. Sometimes that happens. Usually, it leaks. One small lie, one broken promise,
What?
one conversation avoided because it felt uncomfortable. Then another, and another. Until one day someone says, "I don't even know when we stopped trusting each other." I do. I was there. It wasn't one moment. It was hundreds of little moments that didn't seem important enough to remember, until they were. That wasn't me. I was just the only one still paying attention. You know what I've learned after watching humanity for this long? You don't usually lose your future in one decision. You slowly trade it away, 5 minutes at a time, one habit at a time, one excuse at a time. That's why consequences feel so mysterious. Not because they're random, because they're patient, much more patient than you are. And if I'm being honest, that's why I've never understood why people think I'm frightening. I'm probably one of the least dramatic characters in your stories. I don't chase anyone. I don't keep score. I don't hide behind corners waiting for the perfect moment to ruin your day. I mostly watch. That's all. Sometimes for decades. You know what's strange? You've written thousands of stories about me. Books, movies, religions, philosophies. In almost all of them, I'm standing in front of humanity, pointing at people, passing judgment, deciding what they deserve. I've never recognized that version of myself, because I've never been standing in front of you. I've always been standing behind you, watching one choice quietly introduce itself to the next. Watching ordinary Tuesdays become unforgettable Fridays. Watching tiny decisions patiently grow into stories that later feel impossible to explain. You call that karma. I call it a story finally reaching the chapter where you started paying attention. So let me ask you something. Not about the person who hurt you. Not about your ex. Not about your boss. About you.
Huh?
Can you think of something in your own life, something you once blamed on luck, or fate, or timing, or me? Got it? Good. Now don't start where it ended. That's where humans always begin. Start earlier. No, earlier than that. Keep going. Where did this really begin? Was it the day everything fell apart? Or was it the conversation you kept postponing? The habit you kept excusing? The apology you never made? The phone call you were always going to return tomorrow? The dream you kept promising you'd start next month? Stories are funny like that. You remember the explosion. I remember the spark. You remember the consequence. I remember the choice that nobody thought was important enough to notice. That's never made me angry, just a little sad, because every time you decide karma did this, you also decide the story is over. If I caused it, then there's nothing to learn, nothing to change, nothing to revisit. Responsibility disappears, and with it, so does your chance to write a different ending next time. That's why I finally agreed to have this conversation. Not because I expect humanity to stop blaming me tomorrow. Let's be realistic. Someone's probably blaming me right now because they sent a risky text at 2 a.m. I'm sure I'll hear about it later. And honestly, I'll probably sigh, maybe laugh a little. Then keep watching, because that's what I've always done. Not judge, not punish, watch. Sometimes I think that's the greatest misunderstanding. You imagine me standing at the finish line, deciding where your story ends. I've never been there. I've always been standing quietly at the beginning, watching one ordinary choice meet another, watching tiny decisions gather into habits, watching habits slowly become character, watching character quietly shape a life. By the time people finally notice me, the story has usually been unfolding for years. That wasn't me. It never was. I was just there long enough to remember where it started. Maybe that's all karma has ever been. Not revenge, not justice, not some invisible force settling cosmic scores. Just an old witness, who happened to stay long enough to see yesterday introduce itself to today. So the next time life surprises you, before you look up and ask, why is karma doing this to me? Try something else. Pause. Take one step backward, then another. Keep rewinding until the story becomes ordinary again. Until you're standing in front of a choice so small that almost nobody would have noticed it. Maybe that's where this really began. And maybe that's where your next story can begin differently. Anyway, thank you for finally letting me explain. I've been trying to clear that up for a few thousand years. I'll let you get back to your life. I'll go back to quietly watching it. Like I always have.